Densify is a predictive analytics service that's designed to optimize public cloud, bare metal cloud, and on-prem virtual environments using a combination of predictive and real-time algorithms. This enables customers to operate with less cloud cost, less on-prem infrastructure, and at the same time get better performing apps. It's a unique combination of cloud-based analytics, automation, and a human element with our densification advisors who understand how to get the most out of the analytics and how to drive outcomes for you. And the key to this is that you don't need to learn another tool or another product, and you don't even need to read a manual. You just sign up and start getting outcomes, and you can even start using it for free. Now, when it comes to public cloud optimization, Densify's deep pattern-based analytics drives very, very high degrees of cloud cost savings. It starts with reading the bill, but we go far beyond that and look at the workload patterns to truly optimize the cloud cost. And as you go further down this list, you'll see increasing levels of savings. So starting with the bill, it's very important to understand where your costs are going, which services, which lines of business are incurring those costs, but that's just a starting point. And once you've got a handle on the bill, we recommend identifying any risks and making sure that all your environments have enough resources. Now this can actually cause your bill to go up slightly, but it's very important to ensure performance. Now beyond that, we start to get into the workload pattern analysis and driving true savings. And Densify's unique pattern-based analysis combined with benchmarks allows us to do very, very powerful right-sizing analysis where we can understand exactly what instance you should move to and what is truly deadwood and you can turn off. And by looking at the long-term patterns and business cycles, we can make sure you're not turning off things that actually become active once in a while. Now, right-sizing tends to give 15 to 20% savings, but we take it much further than that because we are also able to analyze between instance classes within the cloud. So using our benchmarks in combination with our pattern analysis, we can understand that what you're running on might be the equivalent of a newer, cheaper alternative. Or we can even go to different types of services to better align your workloads with the types of resources they need. And when we start to do that, we start to see 35 to 40% savings. Now this ability to normalize using benchmarks also means we can analyze between different cloud providers. So if you're running in one provider, we can tell you exactly what your workload would cost in a different provider, and that can often save even more if other providers give an even better fit for your types of workloads. Now once we get to past level 5, we start to get even more advanced analysis, and Densify's ability to do pattern-based workload stacking means that it can also allow you to leverage bare metal cloud environments to drive even higher savings. And by overcommitting resources and cleverly stacking the workloads on bare metal infrastructure in the cloud, we see typically over 50% savings. Now that effect also applies to containers, and being able to run Docker containers, for example, in large Amazon instances, we've seen that save over 80%. So Densify really takes you very rapidly into the initial cost savings, but also takes you where you need to go in terms of your cloud roadmap. Now I didn't talk about reserved instances, and that's very important because that actually impacts everything on this slide. And key to this is that if you have reserved instances, they need to factor into everything you do. You don't want to start right-sizing or jumping between different instance types and misalign with your reserved instances. So it may constrain what you're able to do initially, but the key there is to be able to establish a rollover plan to be able to re-reserve things more intelligently to drive down the savings. And if you don't have reserved instances, it's very important to make sure they're based on the optimized outcome. If you're running things wrong, you don't want to lock yourselves into the wrong answers. You want to optimize first and then reserve for even higher savings. Now taking a look at these features in the Densify service, what you'll see is that it will read the cloud bill and give you a monthly view of exactly what you're spending and how you're doing against budget. It also gives you the ability to dynamically break down that spend based on business service, type of service being supplied, or other tagging, and it's very flexible in that regard, so you can really get a good handle on where your costs are going. And we also have that advisor component. The advisor is constantly watching your environment and chiming in and telling you if there's any strategies they've identified to help you save costs. Now once you have that billing visibility, the next step of course is to look at the actual workloads and understand how you can drive deeper optimization. And Densify does acquire data, utilization data from all the major cloud providers, and it basically does a pattern analysis. It actually learns the patterns of the applications looking at the history and allows you to see what the overall patterns are or the individual patterns, and everything's normalized to benchmark. So for example, this screen is showing the aggregate normalized workload of everything running in Azure. And that's very important because that allows us to get visibility into what's happening, but also it allows us to drive high optimization. So based on those patterns, here's an example of the optimization that we can provide. And if I start at the left, you'll see what it's doing is categorizing all the existing workloads as to whether they are the right size, they are too big, or they're too small. And of course, things that are too small, we want to give more resources to. Things that are too big, we want to take away resources. But even for the ones that are right, we're identifying cases where they can be modernized. And this is very important. For example, here's an example where we're running 7 workloads on M3 larges, but they can actually be brought forward onto the newer M4 larges and get the same performance at a lower price. And this is where it's very important to understand the workload characteristics and the benchmarks of the infrastructure to make sure you can safely move to different classes of cloud infrastructure. I'll highlight a second example which is even more powerful. This is an instance that's too big for the workload that's being run on it, but as we make it smaller, we're going to make it newer at the same time and save over 50%. And what we find is that just doing simple right sizing saves 15 or 20%, but modernizing, when you add that on, in this case, saved 36%. And we've seen upwards of 38%, even 40% in environments when you have the ability to properly analyze the workloads against a complete cloud catalog. Now that ability to do normalized analysis also applies between cloud platforms. So here's an example of a workload where what the analysis is saying is that in Azure, it should be a standard F2 Linux, that's the optimal size, and that costs $95 a month at list. Now if you put it in Amazon, it can run on a C4 large, which is $76 a month. So the ability to analyze between cloud providers and do a very detailed analysis of the workloads to understand what it's going to cost allows you to understand whether you're in the right place. It's also used for migration into the cloud, and it can even roll up to the app level and say for this entire application, in this case Azure is the best place for it to run, but we can see a comparative view of the different cloud providers, and in this case we're even seeing that that app can't run in one of the providers because it's breaking a governance rule. So very comprehensive analysis of your workloads to move them into the cloud and to move them between cloud providers to understand where the best place is to host your applications. Now Densify also has the ability to contrast the t-shirt sizing cloud models with bare metal models. So in this case, here's an example where we have a business service that has 60 components, and if we buy individual small, medium, and large instances for each of them, it costs $13.5 thousand a month. Now that same provider actually provides a bare metal option where I can rent a blade instead of an instance, and this entire set of 60 workloads will fit on 4 blades for $6,600 a month, which is basically just over half savings. So it's a 51% savings on the t-shirt sizing models, which is a very considerable savings. And we're finding this comes up a lot in our customers where they're looking at their workloads saying, well, that's a very inefficient way to host them if I buy individual instances. And if I look at the bottom curves, you'll see why. If I buy 60 individual instances, I'm basically buying little islands of capacity for my workloads, and I'm sizing them to the peak utilization within that container, and it's a very inefficient use of capacity. We get very low overall utilization. If I buy bare metal and I overcommit using hypervisor, I can stack things in this case over 4 times higher safely. And that's really the hallmark of virtual environments for the last decade, where you can do that in the cloud as well, because a lot of cloud providers are starting to provide bare metal options. Now this effect also extends to containers, and you can't run a hypervisor inside a cloud instance, but you can run containers. So here's an analysis of just under 1,000 workloads being put in Amazon using small, medium, and large sizing model, and it's about $1.9 million a year. That's fully optimized. If we didn't optimize the sizing, it would be about $2.3 or $2.4 million a year. Now those same workloads, when in Docker containers, can stack into 4 X132X larges in Amazon. So by stacking containers inside very large cloud instances, I get a huge savings, in this case over 80%. And we think that this is the way of the future, that a lot of our customers are very interested in container technologies for the agility, but also for the savings. And when applied in a public cloud context with the right analytics, you can really drastically reduce your cloud bill. Now the best part is you can start using Densify for free, so you can sign up and start seeing the results against your own workloads very rapidly.